All right, so this is our last part of our notes. Today we're going to focus on the multi-step inequality pieces. So we did the top problem yesterday in class. So now we're going to go down to the bottom two. And these are all about doing some work before we can start solving the equation. So in the first one, we see 10 is less than negative 2x minus 5x minus 4. So we have too many terms there, too many pieces, so we need to do some combining. So I want to combine the 2x and the 5x, but remember subtracting and negatives aren't going to get along very well. So when we're combining like terms, we want to make it into adding the opposite. So I have a negative 2x and a negative 5x. Those are both like terms because they have the same variables, and that gives me negative 7x. The minus 4 just hangs out. If you change the minus 4 to adding a negative 4, that's totally fine. Now it's just a two-step inequality, so we're ready to solve it. So we focus on the side with the x, take care of the adding or subtracting first. They subtracted 4, so I'm going to add 4 to both sides. Those cancel out. I'm left with negative 7x, still less than, and 10 plus 4 is 14. Now I'm ready to take care of the multiplying. So negative 7x means negative 7 times x. So I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to divide by negative 7. But a little alarm is going to go off in my head. Okay, I'm dividing by a negative number. Remember, when we divide by a negative number, our inequality gets flipped. So instead of less than, it becomes greater than. Multiplying and dividing by negative 7 turns to a 1, or simplifies to be a 1, so it's just x. 14 divided by negative 7 is negative 2. Okay. Now we're going to graph it on our number line. Our answer, number negative 2, is going to go in the middle of our number line. And then be careful on how you number it. Going to the left, we're going down into the negatives. As we go to the right, we're going up towards the positive numbers. It's greater than, so I just want an open circle because I don't actually want negative 2. Okay. And then be careful on your shading. This is where we have some trouble. When the number is first instead of the variable, it can be tricky. So say it to yourself, negative 2 is greater than my numbers, greater than x. So if negative 2 is greater than my numbers must be less than the negative 2. Well, numbers that are less go to the left on my number line. So I'm going to shade those numbers going to the left. Okay. All right, so now we're going to flip to the next page in our notes. So yesterday we added 2 problems up at the top of the page. I want to add an extra one down at the bottom of the page. Now, I know from some people today, you did your problems yesterday on those 2 spots, so you've already used up this space at the bottom. If that's the case, not a problem. You can do it down in the summary section, or you can do it over in the left-hand side where we write our questions. Okay, wherever you have space, but I want you to add this problem. For this one, I don't have any like terms that I need to combine, but I do need to use distributive property. That's when that number is right next to our parentheses. So when I think of distributive, I think of those pretty little rainbows. I want to take that 4 times each of the terms on the inside. So 4 times negative 2 is negative 8x. 4 times 5 is 20. So I just use distributive property to rewrite it. The rest of the problem just stays the same. But now that I've used distributive property, now I'm ready to go ahead and solve it. So solve it like a 2-step inequality. They added 20, so I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides. But remember, subtracting and negatives, we tend to make a lot of mistakes. So we're going to change that subtraction to adding the opposite. It's the same thing, but we're less likely to make a mistake in our calculation. On the left side, negative 12 and negative 20 is negative 32, is less than negative 8x. Now I'm ready for step 2. Step 2 is to undo the multiplying or dividing. Negative 8x means negative 8 times x. So I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to divide by negative 8. And I get x and 4. But again, that little alarm should go off in our head. Hey, I divided by a negative number, so I need to flip my inequality. That negative flipped the sign on my problem, so I need to flip that inequality around to go with it. So we're going to graph it on our number line. 4 is going to go in the middle. And I'm going to count up and down from there. Again, I just want greater than, so I just want an open circle because I don't actually want 4. And then I say my inequality to myself. 4 is greater than x. Well, if 4 is greater than my numbers must be smaller. So I'm going to shade going to the left because I want smaller numbers. All right, so first one, we had to combine some like terms together. Second one, we need to do the distributive property. Before we go to our next one, let's do a quick check. Okay, checking these can be a little bit more complicated, but here's the strategy. Look at the side of the line that you shaded in and choose one of those numbers. So maybe I choose the 2. I'm going to go back to the original inequality and I'm going to plug that number in for x. So I'm going to do mine over here. I've got -12 is less than 4 times -2. Instead of x, I'm going to put in 2 plus 5. Now I just follow order of operations. So I'm going to do in the parentheses first. -2 times 2 is -4. And then -4 plus 5 is 1. 4 times 1 is 4. The rest of the problem just slides down. Is it true that -12 is less than 4? Well, yeah, -12 is less than 4, so I know I shaded the correct direction. All right, now flip back to that first page and we're going to do that last one. And we save this one for last because you're going to notice I've got distributive property, but I also have some extra numbers in there, meaning I'm going to need to do both distributive property and combining like terms. So I'm going to start with my distributive property. That always goes first. Okay, multiplying goes before adding. 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times x is -7x. Remember, you can put that 1 in front of your x. The 9 is just going to hang out. It's just part of my problem. It just slides down. It wasn't in the parentheses, so it doesn't get multiplied times the 7. Now I'm ready to start combining some things together. But what I want to be careful of is subtraction and my variable term do not get along. I'm very likely to make a mistake. So when I see subtracting in front of my x, I'm going to change that to adding the opposite. Okay. Now I'm going to look to see if I can combine any like terms. Well, in this case, 14 and 9, those are just constants, plain old numbers. They're both the same thing. They're both just plain numbers, so they can be combined together. 14 and 9 is 23. The -7x just hangs out. Now I'm ready to go ahead and solve. So I draw my line down through my inequality. I take care of the addition first. So they added 23, so I'm going to subtract 23 from both sides. On the right side, if you have trouble with 2 minus 23, just because it's hard to take away 23 from 2, go ahead and change it to adding the opposite. Remember, we can always rewrite that subtraction as adding the opposite. Now we see that it's 2 plus -23. Different signs subtract. 23 minus 21 is 23 minus 2 is 21. And take the sign of the higher number. The negative was larger. So I get -7x is greater than or equal to -21. Now I'm ready to go ahead and solve or finish solving. So I'm going to divide by -7 because they multiplied by -7. Remember that little alarm should go off in your head. Hey, I'm divided by a negative number. So I'm going to flip my inequality. Instead of greater than or equal to, it becomes less than or equal to. And -21 divided by -7 is 3. All right, so I use up too much space up top, so I'm going to go down here to do my number line. Hopefully you've got enough room on your page if you don't write it as gigantic as I do. I got 3 for my answer, so 3 is going to go in the middle. I'm going to number it going up and down. This time I want less than or equal to, meaning I'm going to go ahead and shade in that circle because it's okay to be equal to the 3. And then I need to shade. Well, it says x is less than or equal to 3, meaning I want numbers that are less than 3. Okay? But remember, our inequality symbol also gives us a good clue. When the variable is first, look at your inequality and look at where it points. It's pointing to the left because I want numbers that are less than. So I'm going to go ahead and shade to the left. So remember, that trick only works if the variable is listed first, but that inequality kind of points you in the direction that you want to shade. All right, so that's the end of your notes. Okay, let me know if you have questions, and have a great day.